My parents spent my inheritance on my brother's wedding, so I sued them, but what I did next left everyone speechless. My great-aunt Margaret was hands down the most incredible woman in our family. Born in 1920s rural Tennessee, she watched her own mother get pulled out of school at 14 to marry some farmer twice her age. That moment shaped everything about who she became. While other women in our family were expected to find husbands and have babies, Margaret had different plans. She packed her bags, moved to Boston, and became one of the first women to earn a medical degree from Harvard University. She never forgot where she came from, though. Every Thanksgiving, Margaret would tell us stories about the women in our family who never got their chance. The brilliant minds who spent their lives cooking, cleaning, and raising children because that's all society expected of them. She'd look at me and my female cousins with this fierce determination in her eyes and say, "Not you girls. You're going to have choices." That's why she set up education funds for every girl in the family. "Not the boys, they get their opportunities handed to them anyway," she'd say with a knowing smile. "But us girls, we needed someone fighting in our corner." She put away thousands of dollars for each of us. Money specifically earmarked for college, trade school, whatever education we wanted to pursue. When I graduated from Lincoln High School in Portland with a 3.9 GPA, I was ready to claim that future Margaret had secured for me. I'd worked my tail off, taking AP classes, volunteering at the local hospital, and dreaming of becoming a nurse like my great-aunt. The plan was simple: use Margaret's gift to attend Oregon State University, graduate debt-free, and start my career helping people. I remember walking into Wells Fargo that sunny June morning, dressed in my best outfit, practically floating with excitement. I had my acceptance letter, my enrollment paperwork, everything ready to start my new life. The teller, a friendly woman named Mrs. Thompson, pulled up my account with a smile. Then her expression changed. "Miss Johnson," she said carefully, "I'm showing a balance of $52,000 in your education fund." My stomach dropped. "That can't be right," I stammered. "There should be almost $210,000 in there." My great-aunt left specific instructions. Mrs. Thompson clicked through several screens, her frown deepening. "I see multiple large withdrawals over the past 18 months. The most recent was just 3 months ago, $95,000. The world started spinning. I gripped the counter, fighting back tears. "Who made those withdrawals?" "According to our records, your parents had joint access to the account as co-trustees until you turned 18. Co-trustees. The words hit me like a freight train. Margaret had trusted my parents to protect my future, and they'd betrayed that trust completely. I stumbled out of that bank feeling like I'd been sucker-punched. Everything I'd planned, everything I'd worked for, was crumbling around me. But more than that, I felt this burning anger building in my chest. Someone was going to pay for this. I drove straight home from the bank, my hands shaking on the steering wheel of my beat-up Honda Accord. The whole way, I kept thinking there had to be some mistake, some reasonable explanation. Maybe my parents had moved the money to a different account. Maybe they were surprising me with something even better. I was wrong. Mom was in the kitchen making her famous apple pie when I burst through the door. Dad was watching the Mariners game in the living room, a beer in his hand, looking completely relaxed. They both looked up when I stormed in, but neither seemed surprised to see me upset. "We need to talk," I said, my voice already shaking with rage. "Now." Dad muted the TV with an annoyed sigh. "What's got you all worked up, Jessica?" "My college fund. That's what's got me worked up." I threw my bank statement on the coffee table. "Someone want to explain why there's only $52,000 left when there should be almost $210,000. Mom and Dad exchanged a look, one of those married couple looks that said they'd been expecting this conversation. That's when I knew for sure this wasn't a mistake. "Honey," Mom said, wiping her hands on her apron, "we can explain." "Oh, I'm sure you can." My voice was getting louder, but I didn't care. "Where's my money?" Dad cleared his throat. "We needed it for Derek's wedding. You know how important that day was for our family." Derek's wedding. My brother's ridiculously over-the-top wedding to his college girlfriend Ashley at the Portland Country Club. The ceremony that cost more than some people make in 2 years. The event that had everyone in our extended family talking for months about how beautiful and elegant it was. "You spent my college money on a party." I could barely get the words out. "It wasn't just a party," Mom snapped, suddenly defensive. It was your brother's wedding day, a once-in-a-lifetime event. The Washingtons are one of the most respected families in our community, and Ashley deserved a wedding that honored that. What about what I deserved? I shot back. What about the education Great-Aunt Margaret wanted me to have? Dad stood up, his jaw set in that stubborn way that meant he was done discussing things. Family comes first, Jessica. Always. Your great-aunt would have understood that. No, she wouldn't have. I was screaming now, years of being the overlooked daughter finally exploding. She specifically left that money for my education because she knew what it was like to have her dreams stolen by men who thought they knew better. Watch your tone, young lady, Dad warned. We raised you better than that. Did you? Because the parents who raised me wouldn't steal from their own daughter to throw a party for their golden boy. Mom started crying then, those manipulative tears she always used when she wanted to end an argument. Jessica, we're still your parents. We love you. We'll figure something out for your college. Figure something out. I stared at them in disbelief. You stole my future, and now you'll figure something out? What exactly are you going to figure out? Are you going to magically make $158,000 appear? They didn't have an answer for that. They just stood there looking at me like I was the unreasonable one, like I was causing drama over nothing. That's when it hit me. They genuinely believed they'd done nothing wrong. In their minds, Derek's happiness was worth more than my entire future. His wedding was more important than my dreams. I'm done, I said quietly. I'm done pretending this family cares about me. I walked out of that house knowing I'd never see my parents the same way again. I spent the next 3 days crashing at my best friend Mia's apartment, trying to figure out what to do next. Mia's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Rodriguez, had always treated me like a second daughter. And when they heard what happened, they were furious on my behalf. Those people should be ashamed of themselves, Mrs. Rodriguez said over breakfast on my third morning there. Stealing from a child's education fund to pay for a wedding, that's not just wrong, it's criminal. Is it actually criminal, though? I asked. I mean, they were co-trustees. Maybe they had the legal right. Mr. Rodriguez, who worked as a paralegal downtown, shook his head firmly. Legal right and moral right are two different things, sweetheart. But even legally, there might be grounds for action. Trust funds have specific purposes. That afternoon, I found myself sitting in the office of Catherine Walsh, one of Portland's most respected estate attorneys. She was a sharp woman in her 50s who reminded me a little of Great-Aunt Margaret, that same fierce intelligence and refusal to back down from a fight. Tell me everything, she said, pulling out a legal pad. I walked her through the whole story, Margaret's intentions, the education fund, my parents' access as co-trustees, the wedding expenses, everything. Ms. Walsh took notes, asking pointed questions and occasionally making sounds of disapproval. This is a clear breach of fiduciary duty, she said finally. Your great-aunts will specifically designated this money for educational purposes. Your parents violated their responsibility as trustees when they used it for anything else. So I have a case. You have an excellent case. The question is, are you prepared for what comes next? She leaned forward, her expression serious. Suing your parents isn't going to be easy. Your family will turn against you. People in your community will take sides. This will get ugly. I thought about Great-Aunt Margaret, about all the women in our family who'd had their dreams crushed by people who claimed to love them. I thought about the future I'd planned, the career I wanted, the life I deserved. I'm ready, I said. Ms. Walsh smiled. Good, because we're going to make them pay every penny back, plus interest, plus your legal fees. Your great-aunt didn't save all that money just to see it wasted on overpriced centerpieces and a DJ. Walking out of that law office, I felt something I hadn't felt in days, hope. For the first time since discovering the theft, I had a plan. I had someone on my side who understood that this wasn't about being vindictive or greedy. It was about justice. That evening, I called my parents from Mia's apartment. Mom answered on the second ring, her voice hopeful. Jessica, honey, are you ready to come home? We can talk about college options. I'm not coming home, I said calmly. And I'm not interested in your college options. I'm calling to let you know that I've hired an attorney. You stole my inheritance, and I'm suing you to get it back. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then Dad's voice, angry and disbelieving. You did what? You heard me. Catherine Walsh will be contacting you soon with the paperwork. You can explain to your lawyer why you thought it was acceptable to steal from your own daughter. Jessica, don't do this, Mom pleaded. Think about the family. Think about our reputation in the community. I'm thinking about family, I replied. I'm thinking about Great-Aunt Margaret and what she wanted for me. You should have thought about your reputation before you decided to steal. I hung up before they could respond. My hands were shaking, but for the first time in days, I felt like myself again. The war was officially declared. The next few weeks were absolute chaos. Word of the lawsuit spread through our community like wildfire, and suddenly everyone had an opinion about what I was doing. The reaction split almost perfectly along generational lines. Older folks thought I was a disgraceful daughter who didn't understand the meaning of family loyalty, while people my age and younger were cheering me on for standing up to my parents. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. First, it was my Aunt Linda, Mom's sister, calling to tell me I was destroying the family over money. It's not about money, I kept trying to explain. It's about them stealing what wasn't theirs to take. They're your parents, Jessica. They fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head for 18 years. Don't you think you owe them something? I don't owe them my future, I shot back. And Great-Aunt Margaret didn't sacrifice her own money just so they could throw a party. But Aunt Linda wasn't hearing it. None of them were. My cousin Jake called next, trying to play mediator. Look, Jess, I get why you're mad, but suing Mom and Dad? That's cold. Can't you guys work something out privately? I tried working something out privately, I told him. They laughed in my face and told me to get over it. But think about what this is doing to them. Dad's blood pressure is through the roof. Mom's not sleeping. They're talking about having to mortgage the house. Then maybe they should have thought about that before they spent $158,000 that didn't belong to them. Jake got quiet for a long moment. You've changed, Jessica. This isn't who you used to be. You're right, I said. I used to be the daughter who stayed quiet and let everyone walk all over me. But that girl is gone. The worst part was dealing with Derek, my brother, the golden child, the reason my future had been sacrificed. He showed up at Mia's apartment 2 weeks after I filed the lawsuit, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Jessica, we need to talk. I almost didn't let him in, but curiosity got the better of me. You're really doing this? He asked, slumping onto Mia's couch. You're really going to destroy our family? I'm not the one who destroyed anything, I replied coldly. I didn't steal anyone's inheritance. I didn't prioritize a party over my sister's education. It wasn't just a party. It was my wedding day, the most important day of my life. And my education was the most important thing in my life. But that didn't matter to you or Mom and Dad, did it? Derek ran his hands through his hair, looking genuinely distressed. Look, I didn't know they were going to take your money, okay? If I'd known. You would have what? Stopped them? Given me a cheaper wedding? Come on, Derek. You knew that money came from somewhere. I thought they had savings. You didn't think at all. You just took what was offered and assumed someone else would figure out the consequences. I sat down across from him. Do you know what Great-Aunt Margaret used to tell me? She said the women in our family had spent generations watching their dreams get sacrificed for other people's happiness. She saved that money specifically so I wouldn't have to be one of them. Derek was quiet for a long time. Finally, he looked up at me with something that might have been remorse. What if I paid for your college? Ashley and I are doing well. I could take out loans. For just a moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe my brother did understand. Maybe he was willing to make this right. You do that? I asked. Yeah, I would. Just drop the lawsuit and let me handle this. Put it in writing. What? If you're serious about paying for my college, put it in writing. A legal contract that guarantees the money. Derek's face changed instantly. You don't trust me. Should I? Your wedding is the reason I'm in this mess in the first place. I'm your brother, Jessica. My word should be good enough. Your word isn't worth anything to me anymore. None of your words are. He left after that, but not before calling me cold and ungrateful. Just like everyone else in my family, He expected me to trust blindly and ask for nothing in return. But I was done being anyone's fool. After 8 months of legal battles, settlement negotiations, and family warfare, we finally got our day in court. I'll never forget walking into that Multnomah County courthouse in downtown Portland, wearing my best suit and carrying a folder full of evidence that would change my life forever. Ms. Walsh had prepared me well. We had Great-Aunt Margaret's will, bank records showing the transfers, documentation of the wedding expenses, and testimony from several family members who could confirm Margaret's intentions for the education fund. My parents' lawyers tried to argue that as co-trustees, they'd had the discretion to use the money as they saw fit, but the language in Margaret's will was crystal clear. The funds were to be used exclusively for the educational advancement of her great-nieces. The hearing lasted 3 hours. I watched my parents sit at the defendant's table, looking older and more fragile than I'd ever seen them. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for them. Then I remembered the casual way they dismissed my future, and the feeling passed. Judge Robert Harrison delivered his ruling with the kind of authority that reminded me why I'd always respected the legal system. The evidence clearly shows that the defendants violated their fiduciary duty as trustees by using funds designated for educational purposes to pay for personal expenses. The plaintiff is entitled to full restitution of the misappropriated funds, plus interest and reasonable attorney fees. I had won. Completely, totally, unequivocally won. The final judgment was for $205,000, the original amount taken, plus 3 years of compound interest, plus my legal fees. It was more money than I'd ever seen in my life, enough to pay for my entire college education and graduate school if I wanted. But victory came with a price I hadn't fully anticipated. To pay the judgment, my parents had to take out a second mortgage on their house, the house where I'd grown up, where they'd planned to retire, where 3 generations of our family had gathered for holidays and celebrations. The house that had been their pride and joy became a symbol of the financial devastation my lawsuit had caused. The news of the judgment spread through our community even faster than the original lawsuit had. Suddenly, I wasn't just the girl who'd sued her parents, I was the girl who'd forced her parents to mortgage their home. The narrative shifted from whether I was right or wrong to whether I was heartless. She got her money, people whispered. Why didn't she stop there? What they didn't understand was that I'd never had control over the final amount. Once the legal process started, it followed its own logic. The interest and attorney fees weren't something I demanded out of spite, they were automatic consequences of my parents' decision to fight the lawsuit instead of settling early. My mother called me the day after the judgment, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her words. "Are you happy now?" she managed to get out. "Are you satisfied with what you've done to us?" "I didn't do anything to you," I said quietly. "You did this to yourselves when you stole my inheritance. We gave you life, Jessica. We raised you, loved you, sacrificed for you. And then you stole from me. Love doesn't give you the right to take what isn't yours." She hung up on me, and we didn't speak again for months. The worst part was seeing how the judgment affected my extended family's view of me. Relatives who'd been neutral before suddenly saw me as the villain who destroyed my parents' financial security. At family gatherings I wasn't invited to, they talked about how cruel I'd been, how I could have stopped the case at any time but chose to push forward. What they didn't know was that my parents' lawyers had been the ones pushing for a trial. Ms. Walsh had tried to negotiate a settlement multiple times, offering to waive the interest and attorney fees if my parents would just return the principal amount. They'd refused every offer, insisting they'd done nothing wrong and would fight the case to the end. But none of that mattered to my family. All they saw was that I'd taken my parents' house, and I became the cautionary tale they told their children about what happened when you put money before family. The isolation was overwhelming. I'd won my case, secured my future, and proven that I wouldn't let anyone steal my dreams. But I'd also lost my family, my community, and the only life I'd ever known. Sometimes, lying awake in my dorm room at Oregon State that fall, I wondered if the victory had been worth the price. Then I'd think about Great-Aunt Margaret, about the women in my family who'd never gotten their chance. And I knew the answer. Some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight costs you everything else. 6 months after the court judgment, just as I was settling into my pre-med studies at Oregon State, my family decided they weren't done with me yet. Apparently, winning my case and getting my inheritance back wasn't punishment enough for their taste. They wanted me to help fix the mess they'd created. It started with a call from Derek. I almost didn't answer. We hadn't spoken since the trial, but something made me pick up. "Jessica, we need to talk," he said, his voice strained. Mom and Dad are struggling with the mortgage payments. Their credit is shot, and they're talking about selling the house. I'm sorry to hear that, I replied. And I meant it. Despite everything, I didn't want to see them lose their home. Look, you got what you wanted, right? You have your college money back. Maybe you could help them out a little, just until they get back on their feet. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You want me to give them money? The same money they stole from me in the first place. It's not all about you, Jessica. Think about the family. Think about Mom and Dad's legacy. I'm thinking about legacy, I said. I'm thinking about Great-Aunt Margaret's legacy and what she wanted for me. She didn't save that money so I could give it back to the people who stole it. Derek got angry then, calling me selfish and vindictive, but I'd heard it all before. What surprised me was the call I got from my father 2 weeks later. Jessica. Dad's voice was different, softer, more defeated than I'd ever heard it. I know we haven't been on good terms, but I wanted to ask you something. What is it, Dad? Your mother and I have been thinking about what happened, about the lawsuit and everything after. We want to make things right between us. For a moment, my heart leaped. Maybe they were finally ready to apologize, to acknowledge what they'd done wrong. We've talked to a financial counselor, Dad continued, and we think the best way to move forward is to combine our resources as a family. Pool our money together so we can help each other through tough times. I was stunned, silent. You could contribute part of your settlement money to a family fund, he went on, and we'd all have access to it when we need help. That way, we're supporting each other instead of fighting. You want me to put my inheritance into a joint account that you'd have access to? It would be a gesture of good faith, honey. A way to show that family comes first. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. After everything we'd been through, after they'd stolen from me once, they were actually asking me to voluntarily give them access to my money again. Dad, I said when I finally stopped laughing, do you remember why we went to court in the first place? That's in the past now, Jessica. We need to focus on the future. The future where you have access to my inheritance again? Yeah, I don't think so. The conversation went downhill from there. Dad accused me of holding grudges and being unforgiving. I reminded him that trust, once broken, had to be earned back through actions, not words. But the family pressure didn't end with my parents. Over the next few months, I heard from various relatives asking for loans from my settlement money. My cousin needed help with his car payment. My aunt wanted assistance with her daughter's medical bills. Everyone seemed to think that because I'd won a large sum of money, I owed it to the family to share. The final straw came at Christmas. I decided to attend my grandmother's holiday gathering, hoping that enough time had passed for things to be civil. I was wrong. My Aunt Linda cornered me in the kitchen while I was helping with dishes. You know, Jessica, I've been thinking about your situation with your parents. Have you? I think there's a way for you to help them without it being charity. You could buy their house from them, pay off the mortgage, and let them live there rent-free. That way, they keep their home, and you get a good investment. I stared at her in disbelief. You want me to buy my childhood home from my parents with the money they stole from me? It's not stealing if you're family, honey. And this way, everyone wins. Everyone except me, you mean? That's when I realized something important. My family would never stop seeing me as a resource to be exploited. They'd never accept that I had the right to keep the money Great-Aunt Margaret had left for my education. In their minds, any money I had belonged to the family collective, and I was being selfish by keeping it for myself. So I made a decision that left everyone speechless. I started a scholarship fund. Using half of my settlement money, I established the Margaret Johnson Educational Foundation, dedicated to providing college scholarships for young women from underprivileged families in Oregon. I worked with Oregon State University to create a program that would give 20 women each year the chance Margaret had given me. When word got out about the foundation, my family was shocked. Some of them were angry that I'd given away money I could have used to help them. Others were confused about why I'd choose strangers over family. But I knew Margaret would have been proud. I'd taken the money she'd saved for my education and used it to educate an entire generation of young women. I'd turned my family's betrayal into something beautiful and lasting. The foundation's first scholarship ceremony was held on what would have been Great-Aunt Margaret's 95th birthday. 20 bright, determined young women received full tuition scholarships, each one representing a dream that wouldn't be stolen or sacrificed for someone else's priorities. My parents didn't attend the ceremony. Neither did most of my family. But Ms. Walsh was there, along with Mia's parents and several of my professors. We celebrated not just the scholarship recipients, but the power of standing up for yourself and refusing to let others steal your future. As I watched those 20 women walk across the stage to accept their awards, I realized something. I'd won more than a lawsuit. I'd broken a cycle that had trapped women in my family for generations. And that victory was worth every relationship it had cost me. Great Aunt Margaret had saved money to give me choices. I'd used those choices to give 20 other women the same opportunity. The family that rejected me for fighting for my dreams could stay angry if they wanted. I had a new family now, one built on mutual support instead of exploitation, on lifting each other up instead of tearing each other down. And that family was going to change the world, one scholarship at a time. 6 months later, I received a letter that made everything worth it. It was from Destiny, one of our first scholarship recipients. She was studying to become a doctor, just like Margaret had been. She wrote, "Dear Jessica, I wanted you to know that your scholarship didn't just pay for my college, it saved my life. My family was pressuring me to drop out and get married, but your foundation gave me the strength to keep fighting for my dreams. I'm going to be a pediatric surgeon, and someday I hope to start a foundation of my own. Thank you for showing me that some things are worth fighting for, even when everyone tells you to give up." I folded that letter carefully and put it in my desk drawer, right next to the photo of Great Aunt Margaret that I kept there. 2 women, separated by decades, united by the belief that education could change everything. My family never understood what I'd accomplished. They saw the scholarship fund as one final insult, me giving away money to strangers while they struggled with their mortgage. But I knew better. I hadn't given that money away. I'd invested it in something that would last forever, the dreams of young women who deserved better than settling for less. Great Aunt Margaret had broken the cycle for me. Now I was breaking it for others. And that was the most beautiful revenge of all.